Morning everybody, Eric here. Today I wanted to do a quick review about the Illustrated Guide to Viking Martial Arts by Antony Cummins. First of all, I bought this book because I'm actually quite into Vikings and hope to get a good information about their martial arts and stuff. So I got it, and I'm not really satisfied with it, to be honest. You clearly see that Antony Cummins comes from Japanese martial arts. I sadly can't show you the depictions in the book because I would get copyright issues. But there are some techniques, one of the first for example, with Viking sword and shield, where he shows a technique for defense where you put the sword like this in front of your shield to bring it up over your head for then attacking this way, which is just stupid. I mean, this clearly comes from Japanese martial arts. Let me just put the sword down and get the Japanese sword, then I show you the Japanese technique. Which basically works like this. You bring the sword up here to cover your side, and then you attack from here. But why would you do that with a Viking sword if you have a shield? Your side is already covered by the shield. So this technique doesn't make any sense. Yes? You have your shield and it's already guarding your side. It already protects you. Why do you want to guard your side with your sword like this? That doesn't make any sense. If you just want to bring up the sword behind the shield, you just go like this, and there you are. Another thing he shows in every depiction is he basically just leaves the shield here and comes with the arm in front of the shield, which is quite a stupid idea, as well as his position of legs. He always has the left leg in front, which is kind of a boxing motion. I mean, in boxing you always have the left side in front, but I mean, come on, you have the shield on your left and you put your right leg in front. For a simple reason: if your right leg is in front and the shield covers you, your enemy will have a very hard time to reach your leg and to immobilize you. This will be quite difficult. And as I said, this stupid idea of the arm in front of the shield, you move the sword, as far as I always have seen on videos on YouTube and in other books, you move the shield along with the sword and cover your sword arm with the shield. You basically use it a bit like a buckler. You attack with the shield and the sword at the same time, and the shield covers your movement with the sword. So your sword arm is never in danger if you use the shield like this. And you can also cover your actions, make it very, very hard for your enemy to read what you're doing next. I mean, if I have the shield like this, you can't see my sword, and I could simply go in like this, get your shield here, and step you around it, or stuff of that nature, or in the same motion cut your leg. You just have to move the sword and the shield together. And you just attack his shield with yours and press it to his chest, and at the same time you attack his leg or anything. Another thing he doesn't use at all, which I think is quite sad. I mean, this one isn't a very accurate representation, but you can see it's just held in the middle. It has a center grip, which means you have an open door, closed door effect. that can be extremely useful if your enemy, let's say, attacks from here. You can just snap the shield over and attack his sword on. Those are some very useful techniques that are basically just possible if you have a combination like this. But he doesn't take any advantage of that. He doesn't explain those techniques at all. Instead comes up with stuff from late medieval treatises like half-swording. I mean, yes, you can do half-swording with a Viking sword, with a sharp Viking sword, that you grab the blade and to make it stiffer for thrusting, but really, half-swording is a technique European sword masters came up with to overcome basically plate armor, to make it easier to get the point of your sword in the gaps of plate armor. For what do you want to use it in Viking combat? Most Vikings didn't have armor at all, or generally in the time of the Vikings, basically 8th century to 11th century, almost nobody had armor. Just the very high status people could afford that, and they had mail armor. Good thing about mail armor, you can cut through, but a very powerful blow will still break the bones of the one wearing it. So, what do you want to use half-swording for? Doesn't make any sense. The next thing from late medieval treatises he uses, I just take a nice stage fighting sword, I don't like them really, I have it but I don't really like it, is the murder stroke. You basically grab your sword like this and use it like a hammer. Really, with a Viking sword. I mean, this one here has typical reenact problem, which means a quite overfed pommel and an overfed crossbar. This technique would work with a stage fighting Viking sword, but not with a real one. Pommel and guard are too small and too light for that. They don't do much damage. Basically, Viking swords are dedicated cutting swords. They are absolutely dedicated for cuts and slashing and just on mail armor, just brute impact force. This is what Viking swords are made for, and he doesn't take any advantage of that. So that's one big problem in my opinion. And then he even tells things like throwing the sword. Yes, throwing the sword has in late medieval times been done. And it has been done in late medieval times because due to new ways of producing iron and steel, you could afford swords better. They were not that expensive anymore, and they were not high status weapons. They still had a high status for simply the history they have and for the knightly ideals that go along with them. That's what they still had some status, this high status for. I just turn off the light. So they still had this high status for being the noblest of all weapons. Yeah, but in Viking times they were high status for their price. They had to be made in a way that's called pattern welding, which means basically Vikings and Anglo-Saxon blacksmiths just took several strungs of iron and steel, heated them up, twisted them together to a spiral and flattened that out, and then after a few times doing that they put on some hard steel edges, and this took a huge amount of time. Basically they were working for weeks and months on those blades, and therefore they were quite expensive. Why would you throw a sword away that is more expensive than about a house? I mean, a sword like this would have about the price of a house. Why would you throw that at your enemy? Way too expensive for that. A few other things, basically rather obvious things in this book, are hooking techniques with the axe, I mean, those are quite obvious. This is what the beard of the axe is for. It is for hooking. And what you see in his book quite a lot is splitting the shield. I mean, I just let it depend on it and try my luck. I just show you a few of the depictions. For example, this one here, splitting the shield and pulling it down, which I think would not really work. If your sword gets stuck in the shield, you will not be able to pull the shield down. Your sword will simply slide off the groove that you just slashed in the shield. But in opposite to that, your enemy can just turn the shield and disarm you. So trying to do that is actually quite a stupid idea. Some things he always talks about, and there you can see it very well, always exposing the arm. Stupid, just stupid. You are supposed to never expose your arm. I mean, if you expose your arm, you can almost definitely say your arm will be gone. Somebody will cut it off in Viking battlefield situations. Oh yeah, and there we have the half swording. There you go. Stupid idea. I mean, mail has no gaps you can use, and it doesn't make sense. The sword throwing technique I talked about. Yeah, I mean, yes, you can strike your enemy's face with the pommel. There's the murder stroke again. You can do quite some stuff. Yeah, one technique that he shows as well is cutting your enemy's spear off, and I don't really see that on your shield. I mean, if you kick it down and hold it with your foot on the ground and then give a good slash into the spear, I can imagine that it breaks off. But on the shield I don't see that happen. Yes, some things he shows or talks about in his book are things like catching the spear in the air when it's thrown and throwing it back. I've seen people doing this technique and it definitely works, but you really have to be extremely skilled for that, and it's not one of the very common techniques. I mean, how many situations do you have in a fight or on the battlefield to catch your enemy's spear that's thrown at you? I mean, this would work in a duel situation, and only if your enemy already has the spear quite well noticeable in his hand, something like this, and the shield here that you can see the spear in his hand that he's already trying to throw it. Otherwise, a spear moves quite fast when it's thrown, and you have no good opportunity, or mostly your reaction will not be good enough to catch it in the air if you're not expecting it. So I think you only have a chance to catch it if you're really prepared for it. Yeah, even with the two-handed axe, the typical breaking the shield motion, which I think, okay, with the two-handed axe it can definitely work, but I don't think that it makes a lot of sense. As well as fighting with two one-handed weapons, which is shown here, I think this doesn't really make sense. I mean, you most of the time have your sidearm to have a second weapon if one gets broken or lost. Everything afterwards is as nonsensical as many of the stuff before. So you can clearly see that it's just some guy who did Asian martial arts and just tries to put that one-to-one on Viking combat. So cheers and have a nice day.